Let's talk about Vinland Saga, but not this Vinland Saga. We're going to be talking about this one, a faithful yet adaptive adaptation of the manga. When the anime for Vinland Saga was released, I wasn't the most thrilled due to its 3D animation, which typically has fallen short in a lot of anime in my opinion. That being said, I really enjoy the style it brought, exceeding my expectations. The fights were fantastic. The rough, detailed look of even no-name characters in a crowd is really something I appreciate. The art, on top of the great characters and the fantastic plot, make this a great opening season to one of my favorite manga of all time. And I'm very glad they took their time when making the series instead of rushing into an adaptation for money, like some other manga out there. I'm talking about you, Boruto. I mean, when have you seen such a compelling antagonist, right? Askeladd is basically on the same level as Jeffrey Morgan's portrayal of Negan from The Walking Dead. Love him, you hate him, you love him, then you hate him. It just goes on and on while still retaining a soft appreciation of his badassness the whole way through, really. I mean, the guy was cold enough to take out the strongest character in the series. Unfortunately, he didn't have the same introduction in the manga, which really shows his personality and importance right off the bat. Not that his introduction wasn't strong in the anime, however, they were just straight up different. So if I'm gonna recommend my friend to watch the anime, I'll probably tell him to read the first chapter first, because I just enjoy getting straight into the action, seeing what's happening in the present before we go back into the past. That's just my opinion. And Askeladd's character, and the whole time frame of the start of the series, all of it's changed. We start off in Thor's in a war. He's killing people. He's going from boat to boat, just slaying everybody. And somebody knocks him off a boat, yada yada yada. He abandons the war and, starts a family. And from then onward, it's kind of slow paced. It creates mystery in Thor. Why was he so strong just to abandon the Jomsvikings on what was seemingly a whim once he fell into the water? Then he gives up his animals and his food just to help out an escaped slave who's gonna die regardless of what he did. This established his strong sense of morality, his willingness to sacrifice to help others. And the interesting dynamic here is that Thorfinn doesn't completely understand this, not for a long time, nor his plan to avoid his young, eager village members from getting themselves killed and traumatized. This naivety is a theme throughout the series, especially in Thorfinn's character, which, shout out to my boy, we actually have a main character who has flaws that isn't just a good quirk. The series also questions you about morality, which is pretty important in the series. I'm not going to spoil anything past the first season, but I will say that it's pretty much like the most important thing about the series and what they're trying to tell their story about. And there's a pretty sharp contrast between Thorfinn and Thor's in this morality. Even though they went through a similar journey, they're both extremely strong characters who failed in their goals. The difference being Thorfinn is still alive, and we have to discover, who he is without his one and only reason for living, essentially. Which begs the question, can Thorfinn atone, change his ways like his father wanted for him, or is he going to continue to be on the darker side of morality? Of course, reading the manga and reading past the anime, I already know the questions to these, and because of that, Thorfinn kind of became my favorite character with what he did throughout his journey going on past season 1. And on top of all of that, his introduction is so amazing. And of course, I'm talking about the manga because it's completely different. We're introduced Thorfinn as a young kid in the anime, and in the manga, we basically see him next to Askeladd being told be used as a messenger for Askeladd's band, but instead of just, following his orders, he says, I'm not going to do it unless I get a reward. And of course, anime viewers already know what this means if they were to go and read it after watching the anime, but for a first-time reader, this isn't clear what he's talking about when he snaps at Askeladd for, not immediately promising what he wants, and we get a very mysterious vibe. We're questioning what's happening, and then Askeladd accepts so long as Thorfinn kills a commander, and when he does this, draws his father's blade to Askeladd, preparing for a duel, right? The introduction is some of the coolest shit you could find, and I'm just kind of sad that we didn't get the same introduction for our main character. Because in the anime, we're introduced to him as, a young kid who's naive, and it doesn't really help in his likability as a character regardless of his age, and I just think that they could have done a better job. That being said, I still enjoy the opening. It's really good. It's just not the same, and I kind of enjoyed what I got before this. Not only because it made me immediately invested in the anime, or manga in this case, because if I was watching the series Vinland Saga for the first time as an anime, then, you know, I would expect something a lot slower paced going into it rather than what you got in the manga, which immediate action. You know, the first panels in the manga, I think like the first 3 or 4 pages, is like pretty much no dialogue with just people sieging a castle. Contrast that with the anime, and the opening is, you know, it's still a war. So, you know, that's cool. Gets you immediately invested. However, afterwards, then it becomes, you know, a lot more slow paced. But overall, the adaptation is very compelling. I love the teaser / Easter egg thing and the closing cutscene of the finale inside of Thorfinn's Blade that showed some of the cooler characters that we get later on in the series. And for anybody purely watching the anime, you have a lot to look forward to come April, and be prepared for a more philosophical journey through the brutal world that Vinland Saga has produced. I mean, this first season alone makes it one of the best animes to release in recent memory. And I haven't even brought up a lot of the fantastic characters and the complex world building. And if you haven't seen this show yet, go watch it. Or better yet, read it. You won't be disappointed, and for people who don't find the show to be their style, there is a very heavy tone shift coming in Season 2 that I don't think a lot of people are going to be ready for.
That's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.